Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to season 2, episode 4 of the Dateable AF podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about Cougar Town or daddy issues, dating across generations.
Ooh.
It's a hot one for you
There's
today.
a hot one.
So ask yourself if you've ever been the cougar or if you've been the daddy.
I've been both.
When we say daddy issues, we're not talking about paternal issues. We are talking about you being the daddy.
Oh, I like this topic a lot.
Yep. So we were just talking about this, how in 2025, those age gaps, it's like one of you is reaching for your readers and the other one is adjusting their ring light so they can make better TikTok videos.
Oh my God. Do you remember years ago when we were in Central Market? We were back when we loved those hamburgers there and the kids were little. And you would walk in the entrance and you would get the menu and stand there so that when you went up there to order, this was before I started wearing glasses for all of y'all.
I remember this story well.
And I'm a little older than Sarah, but I wasn't wearing any readers or anything at the time. I didn't realize, but we were all standing together and we were holding one menu, Sarah and I looking at it, and I guess I kept pushing it out.
Rachel kept pulling it farther and farther out so she could see, and I kept pulling it back in. I didn't understand what was happening. And then I looked at her and went, oh, you have reached the age where you need some readers, my friend.
That was a really tough moment for me, Sarah.
It was a bad moment. It's because you're so much older than I am. You're the cougar.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Well, talk. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I'm interested in this whole, there's a lot of conversation to have around age gap, and I'm interested in the power dynamic piece of this.
Yep. It's a really interesting thing because in general, if you think about things that give people power in our culture, just this might not be in your specific relationship, but in male-female relationships, men typically have the power because in our culture, men have had the power for centuries. Wealthy people typically have power over people with less wealth. Older people typically have power over younger people, but that one is tricky because that one reaches a point at which it hits a sharp decline. So in other words, the older person has power, and then when they hit a certain age and they become feeble or forgetful, then that power drops off dramatically. So when there's a big age gap in a relationship, it's very interesting to watch what happens with the power.
Yes, and what I'm interested in too is the nuance. I mean, there's power dynamic around sex. There can be power dynamic around money. There's power dynamic around position, maybe in community position or your career position. And those things typically play out with age, don't you think? The money piece anyway, but not always.
Yep, that's true. I mean, now, especially in Austin, there are many, many wealthy young people in this town. But I do think it makes people curious, and sometimes they get nosy about it. It's looking at the age gap in someone's relationship, and they maybe assume that it's a gold digger situation or that someone's maybe taking sexual or social advantage of the other person. So, yeah, it is a really interesting dynamic that tends to arouse a lot of curiosity.
One thing that's probably important for us to put out there is that we all of us out there could disagree on whether or not 15 years is too much or not enough, or it doesn't matter, whatever, and we'll talk about those things. But one thing I know, Sarah, I think the two of us can agree upon is that there is a power dynamic in age, meaning that someone is underage, being approached.
You should clarify what you mean about someone underage. Are you talking about not a legal adult?
Not a legal adult. Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah,
yes.
We should not even have to say that out loud to you people, but of course we are talking about consenting adults on this show. And by consenting adults, we're going to go ahead and say that's 21 and up.
There we go. Just, I think we need to just make that a given, because if we don't, we're going to get calls, or people are going to write in and go, well, it's not appropriate. We are saying that is a baseline. It is inappropriate across the board if someone older is mixing it up with somebody
predatory.
that is. Yes.
Let's call that what it is. Okay, well, that's a whole other show topic. I would just assume that our listeners are very smart people and they would know that, but I'm glad you brought it up.
I don't assume anything anymore, girl.
Oh, God.
Say it.
Can't believe we even have to say this shit. Oh, my God. All right. Well, let's talk about kind of what happens when there are people in a relationship that are in two different life stages. So one person's kind of bringing that fresh, young energy and discovery, but the other person's bringing more life experience and more stability to the relationship.
I think that's great, even if they're just in close age, that sort of having those things mix up is good. But you're right. I have some opinions about this, meaning that I think that if you're, let's say you're in your 30s and you end up being with somebody who's 60, 30-year spread,
mm-hmm.
then there's likely a pretty big difference between what as a 30-year-old is doing and a 60-year-old.
That is true. I'm thinking about the couple, Sarah Paulson and Holland Taylor, and I believe they have a 32-year age gap in their relationship. They are both actors, and they've drawn a lot of attention in the media because of that age gap, and it seems to work for them. So, we're not here to judge anybody. We're just talking about the dynamics that can exist in a situation like that.
One thing that I think about in that is if you meet when you're really young with that age difference, then growing old together with that age difference seems easier to me because you've been doing it for a long time. So naturally, if somebody starts struggling with some health issues, things like that you have a platform and you have time under you and you've been doing all those things. What feels a little scarier to me is the idea of being 60 or 65 and deciding that I'm gonna shop down, as a friend of mine says, in the kiddie pool.
In the junior department?
In the junior department. When if I'm 65 and they're 50, when they turn 55, I will be 70. And that to me is something to really consider, because as someone that is, I'm surrounded by a lot of 70-year-old friends. They're vibrant and healthy women, but there are a lot of knee replacements and hip replacements and a lot of things going on. And people have their A1C numbers on their phone right now. They can read it.
This is true. And I think especially among the sportier gals that might have played some college ball when they were younger, they've got all new parts now.
Exactly. I mean, I literally sat over at my house the other night after dinner with two of my best friends, and they had their phones out and they were arguing about which app was better to store their A1C and their medical data. But I'm going to
tell you that a 40-year-old's not going to be interested in that.
No. They are not.
That is true. If you think about the dynamics of power, so let's say we took a 21-year-old who was dating a 31-year-old, that seems like a very big age gap. Mm-hmm. But if you took a 51-year-old who was dating a 61-year-old, that 10 years isn't as huge. Mm-hmm. And kind of to your point, if you started dating someone older when you were younger, like let's say a 30-year-old dating a 50-year-old, okay, I mean, that's still a huge gap. But I'm 59, and the idea of dating someone who is 79 is probably out of my comfort zone. Yep. So I think it depends what age and stage of life you're in as to how much difference that gap might make.
I do too. And when you talked about the 21 to 31-year-old gap, you have to be realistic. If somebody is 21, maybe not even out of college yet. If they are, they're freshly out of college, or their career is not as established necessarily, or whatever they're doing, they are likely financially not in the place that the 31-year-old is.
Yes, Very
And
true.
so that financial power dynamic that we were just talking about is very likely to be in play.
Yes, absolutely. So, in thinking about people that we know that have dated someone much older or much younger, why do you think there's so much judgment about that in the world?
You mentioned it earlier. I think part of people judge, I think they judge externally. Like if you're the older person, I think they think, oh, you like the younger girl. You want to be seen with the, so it's sort of what you have on your arm is a
Hmm.
judgment.
Hmm.
The younger one gets judged if the older one is successful, has money. That's like, oh, okay,
You must
you got
only be interested in them for their money.
right.
Yep.
I mean, those are ones that pop out to me right away.
Yes, I think that's very true. And kind of to your point, the older person often gets judged as, oh, you must be having a midlife crisis. You know,
Ah,
here you are
yeah.
dating this young person, or and then the young person gets accused of being a gold digger. I also think, in addition to the financial aspect, or that, looking at assumptions about people's motives, that there's also this social discomfort that we have with imbalance.
Mm.
So when someone does seem much more stable or much more financially successful, people wonder if there's a fairness issue involved.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I I think for sure. I mean, think about how many people have gone woo to the Sarah Paulson
Yeah.
and that whole scenario. I mean, and folks, they're both actresses,
Yeah.
probably wildly financially secure, both of them.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I do think because I've seen them out before, and you're looking at it. I mean, the, they're both. I mean, Holland Taylor's beautiful,
Yes.
but she's old, you
Hmm.
know. And I think we just have a hard time not judging people externally on just that, the look of this much older looking woman, even though she's very stately and beautiful, and then this younger woman. It just doesn't make sense to people's, I don't know what they think beauty and
Yeah.
togetherness
Yep.
should look like.
Yeah, that's true. And for those of you who don't know, I think Sarah Paulson is 49 and Holland Taylor, her partner, is 81, and they've been together for 10 years. So since
Yeah.
Sarah Paulson was 39 and Holland Taylor was 71. So, it's a big gap, but they have been stable. They've been very uh, adamant that they have a strong bond. They've been very open about their relationship. And so I think, people tend to project their own insecurities or their own values onto other people. So if you can't imagine dating someone that much older or younger, then it must be wrong. So I don't know that that's a fair assessment.
I don't think it is a fair assessment. Although I think there are some very legitimate questions that you need to ask yourself if you're thinking about dating in those in the that type of scenario is being honest with yourself about what you're signing on to, being honest with yourself about whether or not, I mean, you get in the car and they don't know the Bee Gees. What the hell do you sing along to in the car together?
You don't know who John Bon Jovi is? What?
No, I know. And they're looking at you like you're crazy. And you've got to share music time and they're listening to some shit you can't stand and you don't know.
That is true. And I know that you are kind of making a funny about this, but this is a real thing.
Mm.
It ties to cultural references. And if someone else is talking about their playlist and you're talking about a mixtape and they have no idea what a mixtape is, then you're not going to be able to laugh about it.
I know you can't have those musical journeys together because you're thinking, oh, I remember when I had my first 8-track. First I had a turntable. Now they're going to know that because
Yeah,
those are
those
hip
are
again.
back in.
But they
But
probably did not have to press that little thing into a 45 so that it would go down over the little,
the spindle on the
the
turntable.
spindle,
Yeah,
yeah, on the turntable.
that's true.
And then going to 8-tracks, which had the worst sound ever, but we loved them
They're very
because
convenient for your car.
They were
Yep.
cassettes, and they're sitting there talking to AI, asking it to turn their music on.
I know. I know. So you got to be able to have some kind of overlap and some kind of relatability. So I would say for yourself, just figuring out what that acceptable gap is, because maybe you're super young for your age and maybe you do listen to contemporary music and you don't need to be back in the 80s or 90s with your playlist or mixtape. And so then you might be able to tolerate a little bit more of a span in your dating. I had a child when I was very young. I was 20 when my daughter was born. And so I always made a rule for myself that they had to be closer to my age than my child's age, which gave me 10 years. And I don't think I ever broke that rule. I think I teetered on it one time, but I found that was about
it. Oh my God. That was a good sort of
Yep.
landmark, stake in the ground for yourself. Can appreciate that.
Yep.
Well, there are also young people who have older souls.
Yes.
So I think that's also in play, is that you really do have some young people who don't want to do the typical things that young people do. The whole idea of, the partying or the energy level even is not appealing to them. So
Yes.
that's something to consider.
I think that is very true. So all of that, there's not a magic number, I guess, is what we're both trying to say here. So I think society sort of writes this script for how relationships are supposed to look. Like you're supposed to date someone of a similar age and a similar background, and that anything that falls away from that script can be perceived as threatening. And sometimes it works really beautifully for the people that are in it. So you should assess yourself and what's important to you, and then not worry so much about how other people are judging it.
Yep. The one thing, one more thing, when we talked a little bit about energy on that, is I will say that's one thing to look at, is if you're thinking about dating somebody a lot older than you and you get up into, say, the years I'm in, around there, that
the Medicare years, is that what we're talking about?
I am a Medicare. Yes, I am. I'm a proud Medicare card carrying recipient. Yes. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that with the audience. Is matching energy levels, meaning that if you are a high energy person in that equation, younger with high energy, and you don't need your person to match you in that energy, then you're golden. But if all the things that you like to do in your life, the majority of the activities that you like to do and that sort of thing are pretty high energy, climb mountains and do all that, and you really are going to be bummed out if your person's not with you on a lot of that, then you've just signed on to something. You're asking them to do something they can't do. So you have to know that going in on the energy thing.
And we don't always think about these things when we're first attracted to someone. So we're just planting this seed for you that this is one more thing to consider when you're looking around at who you want to date. So why do you think someone might be drawn to a person who is older or younger than themselves?
Well, older because we're amazing.
Yes, of course.
Because we're wise. We think we are anyway. Well, I do think people are drawn to older people because we do have life experiences that maybe they haven't had, or at least we seem more solid around those life experiences, that maybe we are a little more settled with those, that we typically are a little less, I don't know the right word, but we're not as reactionary, probably don't make a bunch of rash decisions. And so if you're younger and you've been living in that life, I think when you finally meet somebody that you're attracted to that's older, they can feel very grounding to you.
Yeah, I think that maturity and stability can be a real factor in why someone would be attracted to an older person. And what about the flip side of that? What would make you attracted to someone younger?
Well, the obvious would be if they're HOT
Of
and they have a
course.
lot of and have a lot of muscles, maybe a six pack, and
I see who's shallow here.
I'm just being honest. There's that part. And then if you're lucky, they're smart.
Even better. Hot and smart.
Yeah. I think it is, in all honesty, a lot of that may go back to what you were mentioning earlier, and that's about people uh, being drawn to that energy.
Yes, for
that
sure.
and exposing them to things that if they're a curious person, exposing them to things that they might not ordinarily do. Getting, they can be around friends that different group of friends that have a lot of energy and it feels good.
Yes, I think that's true. I think the energy is probably the main factor, energy of all kinds, whether that's sexual energy or doing new things or just like a zest for life that younger people have. And that can be really, really appealing. So it's easy to see why you would date up or down.
So look who's being shallow now, Miss Sexual Energy.
Well, so let's talk about, we've talked about kind of the social perceptions of these, what are they called? May, December romances of one person being older than the other. But what about sort of the private realities, like what it's actually like inside a relationship like that?
I think that we don't know unless we're inside of it. And I would think that you might be able to see if it's not working well by some outside things.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's working well, I would think that you have two people in there that have accepted and actually thrive in their differences and their rhythm, and that the slow, they accept the high energy and both absorb that and entertain it in some way, and love the peaceful nature of their home and the lack of all the drama sometimes that comes with the being young and in those relationships. So I just think that's why we have to be careful, is because we're not there and we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes there's just a mutual attraction and compatibility that we might look, for example, at Holland Taylor and um, Sarah Paulson and think like, gosh, what's the attraction for either of them there? But they seem to be truly compatible and they really just genuinely seem to enjoy each other. And that's not really based on age.
No, and one of the things that has been noted about them is that they made a conscious decision to keep two different homes.
Yeah.
And none of us know how much time they spend together, but my guess is that they pick and choose those places to come together that where they get all that you just mentioned, that it feels good or whatever, but then they can retreat to their own personal activities that maybe don't fit as well. And I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think so too. And my guess is that they, along with, other couples, focus more on their shared values and that, do they probably have the same life goals? They have the same sense of humor. And so it's not really just about age.
Yeah. I have to admit something right now because I'm having a thought that I bet a lot of people have had is, do they have an open relationship?
Hmm.
And
That would
that's based
be,
on my assumption, because I just went through that thought process while we were sitting here.
mhm.
Based on my assumption would be that the younger person needs more than the older person can give them in that way. So I'm just throwing it out there. I just
Yeah,
had that thought process. But Holland Taylor may be maybe Sarah Paulson just needs to get away from that
that's right. She
cougar.
might be a beast in the bedroom.
I'm just saying.
Don't make assumptions. That's right. So Sarah Paulson or Holland Taylor, if you're
Yeah.
listening to us and you want to report back as to whether you have an open relationship or not, we want to hear it.
I do. I want to know which one of you's the beast in the bedroom too. Come on.
Right. We want to have you on our show.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Inquire,
Exactly.
inquiring minds want to know.
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about this a little bit, but I think that there are issues not only with power dynamics, what we talked about, kind of who holds the power, whether it's your financial situation or the stage of life you're in or your life experience. Those things often give you more power in the relationship. But I also think age differences come along with pacing sometimes, like one person wants to move faster than the other. And how do you think that might play out if there's a big age gap?
My guess is that the young person, it's my assumption that the young person probably paces at a little quicker clip. And that as you get older, you learn to sort of step back a little bit more and are a little bit slower to make some decisions or to feel like pacing too, meaning that you have to say yes to everything. That you've learned more about, yeah, I only have so much energy and I'm just don't want to spend it in all over the place. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. What about you? What do you think?
I think so too. I think FOMO is much more prevalent when a person is younger. And as we get older, it's like there's only one thing I can do right now, and there are millions of things I cannot do. And so we don't feel that need to be doing 100 things at once. I think, though, we're talking from our own perspective, being women of a certain age. But if you're looking at women who are younger, let's say someone who's 45 and someone who's 35, those could be very, very different times of life. The 35-year-old might still be thinking about having kids, and the 45-year-old may have decided she doesn't want kids at that stage of life, or vice versa. I guess that doesn't necessarily have to be an age thing, but I think, career comes into play, that there are times in life when your career is super important. There are times when maybe being a parent is important. And I think those can all be impacted by age.
Yeah, that is true. And then we have menopause.
Oof. Yeah,
and it is real, people. We are not joking about that. It is real. And that shit
is real.
Will toss you around.
That will F you up.
It does. And for those of us that have been in that wave, you can have a partner that's your age and it can F you up. But,
if you got a younger partner, absolutely. And if for those of you who aren't there yet, just keep our email address on file, because you're going to want to reach out to us in a few years, and we are going to guide you through it, girl. Don't worry.
And enjoy all those things that are working just the way they've always worked for you right now. Because one day,
there will be a time. There'll be a time
when you will run screaming. I mean, screaming to your gynecologist, begging her for some miracle.
I'm going to let you speak for yourself on that one.
Yeah, don't act like you hadn't been there. I'll tell you what.
That's between me and my doctor.
Okay, Miss Chris. So last night, I did want to make reference to our fantastic event last night at the 1972 bar. We had our first live event podcast at the women's sports bar here in Austin, Texas. And we had over 100 women packed in this place that was not really equipped to have that many women. And let me just tell you, over the age of 50, who are either going through menopause or are in hormone or using hormones. And I've never had so many women come up to me jerking their shirt like this and going, "Oh my God, do they have air conditioning in here where they turn the air down?" It was rough.
It's August in Texas, and there were a lot of women packed into one room, kids.
They were. Every now and then I felt somebody's being a little grouchy about it. That happens too.
That can happen for sure. And on a more serious note, I did hear a quote that I really loved, that there was a group of women that were of varying ages, and they took a picture, and one of the younger women said, "Oh, I don't look good in that picture." And one of the older women said to her, "Honey, just give it 10 years and that's going to be the best picture you ever took."
Oh, I love that.
And I love that idea. It's like you're the youngest and the hottest that you are ever going to be. And so just appreciate yourself right now at this age. So that applies to all of us, by the way.
Yes, it does. I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah. So let's talk about any potential red flags in a relationship where there's a big age gap. What do you think could be something to watch out for?
I well, I do think that arguing a lot about these fundamental things that we've mentioned, that are things that you knew going in, uh, that this person didn't want to stay out late every night, or didn't want to, doesn't like to go to the loud bar or whatever, and that you are trying to talk them into something that you knew right up front from them that they already were not going to probably do with you. And this
Yep.
leads a little bit into, we were talking earlier a little bit about the normal conflicts versus things that are red flags.
Yeah, for sure. And this goes back to something that you have heard us say over and over again, which is don't go into something hoping the person's going to change. You have to ask yourself right at the beginning, can I accept this person for who they are? And if there's an age gap and your person doesn't want to go out and you do, or vice versa, if your person wants to go out and you don't, you can't anticipate that once you're in a serious relationship, that's going to change. So just being willing to accept where the person is.
Another one that strikes me is about sharing friendships, because
Mm.
that could be kind of interesting in that hopefully you've introduced one another to your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you may know right off the bat that you don't like that they're friends, and that's something to discuss. But if you know right off the bat that you're probably going to be expected to spend some decent time with their friends, and figure out how to make that work, because that's socially acceptable on either side of it.
Yes.
And so if you do it in good spirit in the beginning, and then when you get together and then you just say, no, I'm not doing that anymore, I never liked him in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's going to cause a problem, I think.
It's tough. And the friends could either make that gap seem bigger or smaller. So if you're the younger person in a relationship and you have friends that are younger than you, and that's who you're hanging out with, then that's maybe going to be a little harder for your person. But if you're the younger person in a relationship and all your friends are older, then they're going to fit right in with your older partner. So just looking at how the friendship dynamic could affect the age gap. I think that's a good one.
I
A
do
very
too.
good one.
What are some what would you consider just normal stuff, so that people don't confuse the everyday day-to-day conflict that people have, and age has nothing to do with it?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think normal couples are arguing about the dishes, or maybe they're arguing about how the money's going to get spent or what to watch on TV. Those are typical things that are not age related. But if you're consistently arguing because one person has to work more because they're in a different stage of their career, or if you're consistently arguing about money because one person has so much more money than the other, those are bigger things to watch out for.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about those things in maybe our last podcast, where it's just knowing that those are just the little silly arguments, but is there something bigger beneath it? If so, then you've got to deal with the bigger issue. But if not, and those are just it's your day-to-day living with one another, then get over it, move on. You're fine.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about if you have decided to be in a relationship, or if you're considering being in a relationship with someone with whom there's a pretty big age gap, what are some things that people can pay attention to set it up for success or make it work?
I think you need to pay attention to friendships, and
Mhm.
how I would probably pretty quickly want to introduce my person into friendships. I have a thing about that anyway. I think the sooner you do that, the quicker you kind of find out more about that person. But seeing how they respond to that, how the feedback you get from it, and where they see that, I think that would be one thing.
Yep, I think that's a great one. One of the most important things I think people can do is they can name the differences that exist without blaming or pathologizing. So if you're in a different age or different life stage than your partner, like don't tiptoe around that. Just name it, acknowledge it openly. For example, hey, I'm starting to think about retirement, and I know you're at the height of your career and you're really focused on building that. So let's talk about how we could support both things.
Yeah. And also to go back to the whole idea of, hey, um, I'm not young anymore, or so I'm in menopause and I have to take hormones, and just the things that, so don't jack with the air conditioning. Let me have control of the air conditioner.
That's an important one. How many covers are going to be on the bed, and what's the thermostat going to be
Yes.
set on?
Some serious bad fights have happened around that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you got to be able to keep that thermostat on 69 at nighttime, because it's a real thing.
I mean, I've known of somebody whose hormones were so whacked out that they cried in pickleball and took their toys and went home.
I don't know who you're referring to. Girl, that was the impetus to call the doctor.
I told you, see, you called your gynecologist and you said, "Oh my God."
You have brought this up before,
Mm.
and I don't appreciate you picking on me like that. And I might be mistaken, but it was Veronica that hit that pickleball right at me. And I think she might listen to our podcast. I don't know if she even knows this story.
Well, I hope she feels bad.
Sent me crying to the doctor, but been much more stable ever since I got on hormones. Oh, all right. Let's keep talking about how to make it work. So I think another thing that couples who are of different ages one thing they can do is really focus on aligning their timelines, not just their feelings, because you can love each other all you want, but you can't forget about logistics. So you got to be really clear about how you feel about things like kids, or how do you feel about moving in with someone? How do you feel about finances? How do you feel about the stage of career that you're in? Because you don't really want either person to feel rushed, and you don't want either person to feel left behind. So you got to talk about how all those things might work for you.
In the dating phase, people in the dating phase.
Yes.
And this goes back also to conversation we had the other day. During that time, don't give up everything you do just because the other person doesn't do it. That's another one of those things where if you get up and run in the mornings and you're with an older person who doesn't do that, don't let them believe that you've given up running.
Yes. Yes. And don't believe that they're going to one day get up and go running with you, because it's not going to happen. So figuring all of that out before you get in too deep is super important. The third thing I would say about making sure that you're setting yourself up for success is when these issues come up, you want to stay curious and not get defensive. So if you're talking about a difference, like I really want to go running every Saturday, then ask the person, why, tell me more about why that matters to you. So rather than trying to shoot them down or judge them or get defensive about why you don't want to do something, really try to become curious with them and learn more about why things are important.
Do you think that, I'm just guessing at this, that older people are less concerned about controlling that stuff than younger people are controlling?
I would say from my own experience, yes. I think when you're younger, you feel like you have a control over a lot of things, and when you get older, you realize you don't have control over anything. And so I think the younger folks are out there trying to manage a lot of things and a lot of other people, and when you get older, you're like, no, it's not worth it, and it's not a real thing. You can't control anyone else's behavior.
And you're probably, I mean, if it's me, I'm like, shh, just go ahead, go out of the bed. Shh,
Yep.
Let me have my cup of coffee.
Yep. You go on out and do
Go
what
on
you're
out
going to
there.
do. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Bye-bye,
So
sweetheart.
one more thing I did want to touch on before we wrap things up is, if you are in a relationship with an age gap, how do you deal with judgment from your friends and family?
That's a great question. I don't know. for sure. One thing that comes to mind is you exposing a little bit about what you love about your partner, and talking about the ways that you are together, so that people get a little bit of an inside look into why your lives work well together and the things that you love about one another.
Yes, I think that that is really the best thing, because people who genuinely love you want you to be happy. And when they see your happiness, they're going to be happy for you. I think you do have to, well, you don't have to. I think it helps you if you acknowledge their concerns. So let's say that you're the older person and your family's worried that you're dating a gold digger. I think you have to acknowledge their concerns and acknowledge that you're aware of those things, because the worry is that you're going to get taken advantage of somehow. So I think reassuring people that your eyes are wide open, that you're not going to get taken advantage of on either side. And like you said, genuinely letting them know what's making you happy about the relationship, and letting them see you around this person and see you being happy.
So I was right.
You're always right.
Well, not really, but sometimes.
Okay, well, let's wrap this up. What are some key takeaways that we want folks to walk out with after listening to us today?
The first one would be, it's less about the number and more about being on the same page.
Absolutely. That while age, we're not going to pretend like age isn't a factor. The most important thing is making sure the two of you are on the same page. And if you can do that with an age gap, then great, more power to you. The second thing I would say is make sure that you're showing appreciation for the differences between you and your partner, instead of being critical or disdainful that they're in a different life stage than you.
And then stay aware of power dynamics on both sides. And I do think it's really good to know that those can come into play, and just being sensitive around those and doing things to kind of take care of one another in those positions.
Yes, I think that's great. And we told you guys last time that one of our listeners had asked us if we would give some prompts so that you guys can discuss this issue after listening to the episode. And so the two prompts that we would like you to think about discussing with your partner, if you have an age gap, is, first of all, how do our age differences make us stronger as a couple? And the second thing is, how can we show more appreciation for each other's age and experiences? So talk about that, and then let us know what comes out of it. We would love to hear.
And be sure that you tune in. We hope that we will get to air our 1972 bar episode sometime in the near future. So keep watching on Spotify or however you stream us. And we hope that you'll tune into that episode. It was a big night.
It was a very fun night, y'all. And if you didn't make it this time, then stay tuned. We'll be doing it again, maybe even in a different city this time.
Ooh.
But if you have stories about age gap dating, we would love to hear them. We love it when you message us. So you can email us info@dateableaf.com, or you can send us a DM on Instagram. We are at dateableaf. And please join us next week. We're going to be talking about love languages, or lost in translation, why your partner's way of showing love might feel like a foreign language, and how to actually get the message.
As if things aren't complicated enough.
Exactly. Well, as always, thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
And remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.